the last couple of weeks, Kath, we have loved having a chat around the art of being still. And we talked about what that is, why we should do it, what it can look like. I hope we've demystified what spiritual practice, because we use the language spiritual practice, and we're like, okay, let's make sure we all are on the same page of what spiritual practices are. And I've loved our conversation because I've seen different ways that throughout, the last few years of my life, I've naturally gone and done these things and it's helped me so dramatically. And the science and the research shows that's a no-brainer. Of course, it's going to help you because that's what we're supposed to do, right? So we've spent the last couple of weeks and we're here today for part three because there's more to unpack, Kat.
Oh, I mean, we could go on and on in this topic, which is really exciting, but I'm quite excited to share what we've got for today.
Yes.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
you've been doing some research. You were part of you did a course, and I'd love to hear what did you learn? What can you teach us today? Walk us through it, Kath.
So, what I know about myself is that I naturally am quite often in my head. I
Yeah.
like to understand things, I like to unpack things, I like to think about things. And yes, so last year I attended a course on the neuroscience of change and how we grow and develop and
Mm.
be, go where the life is and
Hmm.
live brave, strong, and fulfilled and do all these fabulous things. And one of the topics that was quite challenging for me was all around what does this all look like when it's less in your head and it's
Mm.
paying attention to what goes on in the body.
Yeah.
And the languaging around this is called like embodied self-awareness.
Yes.
And in all honesty, in the beginning, I'm listening and I'm hearing and I'm processing like all in my head, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I that this is so foreign to me, like I felt like I'd kind of disconnected my head from my body as far as trying to just experience. You spoke about
Okay.
experience last week also, and
Mm.
how to experience what's actually going on in my body.
Mm.
And so I hope that I can take you all on a little bit of a journey today that makes
Mm.
sense, that helps
Great.
give you an extra tool or insight into how do we shift when we recognize those moments of stressed, I'm anxious, I'm buzzing,
Hmm.
I'm overloaded. There's just been all this information coming in, maybe because I've been scrolling social media and I've been binge watching TV
Yeah.
and I've been whatever the thing is, but you just realize, oh my gosh, I'm just in this buzzing,
Yeah.
can't sleep at night sort of space.
Yeah.
And I think the beginning of this journey is the awareness of that state.
Mm.
So, recognizing that, you know, so we've been talking about the art of being still, and the art of being still is to slow down and connect with our heart,
Yeah.
and that kind of shifts us to a completely different state. And it's how do we access a calm inner peace
Mm.
that gives us strength and hope and actually builds resilience, in the long run. And so what we were taught in this course was when it comes to this embodied self-awareness, it's becoming aware of the difference between these two states. So, to explain this quite clearly, I think let's call the anxious, stressed
Hmm.
state A for
Okay.
anxious, yeah.
Okay.
And then well, A and B, but B is just for like being still, maybe
Yeah.
being
Nicely
yourself,
done.
being connected with yourself, being,
Sure.
more relaxed. And so the beginning of this is to actually recognize
Mm.
what it feels like as an experience to you
Mm.
when you're in state A
Mm.
and how different the experience feels in your body when you're in state B.
Yeah.
Does that make
Wow.
sense,
It
Al?
makes it makes complete sense. And so as I'm hearing you, as we're going to unpack this, if we can physically be imagining ourselves in those states. So if we're in state A, where it's anxious and stress, for me, what comes to mind is a very contracted state where
Yeah.
things are tense, where the expression on my face is perhaps quite tight I've got the line between my eyes, the very confused look on my face, and just think about the body language, my stance. If I'm in a stressed and anxious, I'm not likely to be standing tall, looking around nicely. I'm going to be perhaps a bit hunched over, contracted. So yeah, I think you're making sense. I'm on board. I'm sure the listeners
Yeah,
are.
yes. Yeah, and so that's beautiful. And so what this our course instructor helped us also to do is, so Al, let's try this on you. So imagine that you're
Okay.
in that
Sure.
contracted,
Mm.
confused state. And she said, so imagine your hand is like a magnet. And so
Okay.
draw your like place your hand on your body wherever you feel that fe whatever you're feeling
Mm.
most in your body.
Mm.
And for some people, it's your whole body just feels like it's buzzing. But if
Mm.
you can feel an area of your body and your hand's like a magnet drawn to that area to kind of shine a light on
Yeah.
where you're feeling that
Yeah.
anxiety.
Mine would be like I'm sort of imagining it right now.
Mm,
I think it would be right in the middle of my chest. I think that's where my magnet would go to where
yeah,
I would most feel it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Makes
interesting.
sense.
So for me, it's my gut.
Yeah.
You know, for you, it might be in your shoulders. You might
Yeah.
realize your shoulders are
Tense
all up
up.
and tense, or you might feel like you realize your
Yeah.
jaw is so tight and clenched,
Or your
or
forehead is like
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
full of tension. Mm.
So the practice of this exercise is to notice, like catch and notice when you're in that state A,
Mm.
and notice what's happening in your body and where it's happening in your body.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now that you've noticed that, and I'm sort of noticing it, and if you're listening and you're kind of doing this, that now my next thing is to ask you just to shake that off. Like
Mm.
just even if you're shaking in your chair, just shake it
Yeah.
off, move around the room if you need to.
Yeah.
Um, and then imagine that you can now step into a different space. So if you're listening in the room, like walk to a different area of the room and imagine stepping into the state where you're being, like state B,
Mm.
is that state we spoke about last week, where your heart is singing with joy. You are
Mm.
calm, you're relaxed, you feel connected with your heart. You
Mm.
feel like you connected with your maker, you connected with life, and you feel
Mm.
like you are in that space where life is, for you, whatever that's like.
Mm.
And then to pay attention to your body in that
Mm.
state.
Mm.
So, Al, for you, what does that state feel like in your body?
Mm. It feels super warm and fuzzy. I can feel it in my eyes even. Like it does
Okay.
something in my eyes, but I feel it definitely in my belly and in my heart. Like I feel it in my core, but I feel it in my eyes.
Yeah. Feel it in your eyes. That is
Yeah.
so interesting. It's just wonderful
I've never
how we
thought
are all
about it
so
before.
different. Yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, I definitely feel my sort of magnet hand. So if you've got a hand that's like a
Mm.
magnet drawn, for me, it definitely is more in my heart. This state
Mm.
is less in my gut and more in my heart. And I also feel a sense of my shoulders are much more relaxed.
Mm.
I didn't even notice before. I'm starting to notice that in state A, my shoulders are quite high and tense, and it took me a long time to even notice that.
Mm.
But I noticed that, actually, my shoulders are just relaxed, and I feel just more open in my chest. So it's a lot of sort of
Mm.
heart chest stuff for me.
Mm.
Yeah.
We are all different, and that's what's important for us. It's like we can't read something and go, "Oh, there's something wrong with me because I'm not feeling X, Y, Z."
Yeah.
Let's, I love it. Let's explore what does it feel like for me. No right or wrong, no good
Yeah.
or bad. Let's just be curious.
And if you're struggling and you're listening to this right now and you're struggling to feel it right now, my
Mm.
encouragement is next time you notice you're
Mm.
in that space of, my gosh, look at that sunset, or you're belting out a tune with your friends and you're laughing, or, just to, hopefully by listening to this, you'll go, this is that. This is that.
Yes.
How am I feeling? Where am I feeling this? What does this feel like?
Mm.
And so, because our body is so intelligent, like our body
Hmm.
holds so much
Yeah.
information
Yeah.
that our logical brain, we're so busy, your logical brain might be trying to work out a gazillion other things that you're not
Mm.
really aware of what's happening in your body.
Mm.
But back to the journey we're on. So
Sure.
now, hopefully, you've experienced state A
Mm-hmm.
and you are more aware. And if you're not yet, don't stress
That's
about
fine.
it. As time goes on, but if you check in and become more curiously aware, you'll start to recognize the signs.
Mm.
But being aware of state A, being aware of state B, and now in your mind's eye, imagining that there's a bridge
Mm-hmm.
between state A and state B. Like if there was this bridge,
Mm.
and imagining that you have, well, I believe that you do have what it takes, because we all do,
Mm-hmm.
to like listen to me, butter melting, mutter
Butter.
belting, like butter melting. Like
Yeah.
imagine state A is this frozen butter, and it needs time to melt in a pan to a different
Okay.
shape to melt into state B.
Hmm.
And as you kind of cross this bridge, it's this crossing the bridge of the butter melting,
Hmm.
what that represents.
Hmm.
In an ideal world, we all want to just flick a switch. But if it's
Hmm.
not like flicking a switch to get from A to B, but rather it's like some kind of a movement over a bridge of butter melting,
Hmm.
uh, what does that look like for you? And
Hmm.
if you're considering this for the very first time, you might quite easily go, I don't have a clue.
Hmm.
I don't know.
That's what I'm sitting here thinking, going, oh no, Kath's going to ask me what it's like for me. And my eyes are like a deer in headlight. I don't know. Haven't been asked this question before.
Yeah. And so the
Okay.
way to figure that out
Sure.
is to practice this and
Yeah.
practice imagining because I mean, our imaginations are hugely powerful. So
Yes.
we can think ourselves into state A and we can think ourselves into
Ah,
state B.
yeah.
So it's like imagine yourself. So the exercise is imagine yourself in state A, see if you can feel what state A feels like.
Hmm.
And then take a big step to a different
Hmm.
position in the room if you're standing and imagine yourself in state B.
Hmm.
Now that you know what that feels like,
Hmm.
it's almost like switch all those feelings on and then
How do
go
we
back
get
into state
there?
A
Yeah.
and then ask yourself how you got there. What did you need to get there? And so last week we were talking about some of the things that you and I just naturally do.
Hmm.
And what if you knew that
Hmm.
the things that you're already doing, like you
Hmm.
already are intentionally taking yourself down to the beach. You even mentioned before that you're intentionally stepping outside in your jammies and looking up to the sky. Like, what
Hmm.
if that is your bridge?
Yes, it 100% is.
Yeah.
As you're explaining it and as I'm less freaking out, oh no, I've got to answer this question on a podcast while I'm putting it all together. Um, that's exactly like for me, it's where if I don't physically change where I am, so often for me, it's physically putting myself in the sun or physically being in a different place.
Yeah.
Emotionally, mentally, it is my thoughts go towards God, my thoughts go towards what I'm super like if I turn and think about all of the things that I'm really, really, truly grateful for, that butter's melting real fast because I've got lots to
Yes.
be grateful for.
Yeah.
Lots. And so hands down, prayer does that. It has a shift. Music, my goodness, just the first chord of a song sometimes is all that it takes to start that butter melting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Beautiful. And so I just love that hopefully, if you haven't listened to last week or the week before, I really
Mm,
encourage you to go back to listen because I really hope that this gives you practical tools. Because the
yeah.
beauty of all of this is that the next time you find yourself in a season that's
Mm-hmm.
tricky or in a circumstances, and as
Yeah,
all you've
moment.
shared before, you can't change the circumstances.
Mm,
But you can absolutely choose
yeah.
to recognize what state am I in
Yeah.
and to realize that when we're in state A, that stressed, anxious state, the
Mm,
neuroscience also shows cognitively we don't have access to
hmm.
clear thinking, to creative thinking, to problem
Mm,
solving, to figuring stuff out.
yeah.
And we do have access to all of those in state B.
Yeah.
And so if we can practice
Yeah.
Accessing,
Shifting.
stepping into state B in the good times and in the good seasons, we will have access to stepping into those states when the going gets tough. And in fact, the other day I was on a very stressful phone call and I could actually feel my whole body went into a kind of a panic, like the stress
Mm.
response, you know.
Hmm.
And in the moment, my brain was scrambling, thinking, oh, this is
Yeah.
not good. Like, what can I do? What can I do? And the only thing I felt I had access to in that moment where I was like, oh, I know how to do this breathing. You know, we've practiced this box
Yeah.
breathing. Let me just do some breathing. And
Mm.
so that definitely helped. And also
Mm.
just recognizing that, and I started praying straight away, you know, like I can
Yeah.
pray and I can say,
Hmm.
God, like you need to come and help me right now, you
Hmm.
know, please come here, be
Hmm.
here with me. And I truly looking back now and reflecting, like in that moment, could absolutely have gone completely two different directions. I could have not had the awareness to, oh, let me breathe, let me pray, let me
Yeah.
try and get closer to that butter melting. Look, the butter wasn't going to melt just there and then because it was so frozen in you know the anxiety state. But nonetheless, I didn't do what I would have potentially done a couple of
Yeah.
months ago, which was say stuff that I regret saying and you know let my anger
Hmm.
spill out or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just gave me access to finishing off the call
Yes.
in a way where, yes, then I could go walk away and still practice trying to get
Mm.
further and further into state B. But
Mm.
without a doubt, having tools to practice getting into that
Yes.
state of calm and still is so helpful
Yeah,
in navigating this life that we all get to navigate
we
with
do.
all its complexities and
Yeah.
difficulties and challenges. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Because I mean, we've got the choice. We've got the choice of to navigate it in a highly stressed manner. We can. We don't have to make changes. We could go through it highly stressed. But how
yeah,
resourceful is that? How
yeah,
will we be? How will we be for those around us? How are we for ourselves in that state? How resourceful is that? Is it helpful in any way? Or the other choice is I can navigate the same circumstance with a different way of being. And how resourceful is that? And I know, hands down, that that's a much more resourceful way, and it's a much more fulfilling way to navigate the hard seasons of life. And we're also much more pleasant to those around us,
yeah,
if I'm
yeah,
honest, you know. So yeah, there's again no right or wrong, good or bad. We've all got the choice. We can navigate it in state A or state B, but I know
yeah.
how I would prefer to navigate it.
So, Al, circling back to what you were saying right at the beginning of part one of this three-part series we've done with that person in your world,
Hmm.
you know, constantly on their screen, watching and streaming and feeling anxious. I think the take home here is that if we're not aware and we're not giving thought to taking these moments to be still and to tuning into an awareness of our state and accessing that spiritual connectedness that we, you know, been speaking
Mm,
about. Unfortunately, the default is that we end in, you know, we default to the state A of anxiety.
mm.
And so it takes the practice of being aware, choosing that this is what I
Hmm.
want to do because I want to go where the life is and
Yeah,
access more of a resourceful way of being
yeah,
that it needs practice.
it
You
does
know,
need
unfortunately, we
practice.
don't wake up one day and it's just there.
No.
It takes the intention and the practice.
That's right.
So
Just like picking up an instrument, playing a sport, whatever it is, it takes practice. And we've got to practice in the good and the bad so that when the time comes, we've got it.
yeah,
And that's what this is all about.
yeah.
Um,
So as
Brilliant.
always, we'd love to hear from you. How has this helped? How
Yes.
have you, you know, tried and practiced? And if you want more of this, we'd love to have you in our membership.
Agreed. We talk more about this in that kind of space and get around each other and encourage one another. And it's a beautiful space. So, but thank you for joining us on this journey, our little three. It's funny, hey, how we start a conversation and it's become a three-part series on the art of being still. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fabulous. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I know Kath and I have. And bless you. Have a fabulous week. We can't wait to do this all again next week.